Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Patience. So today we are going to be making this beautiful off-shoulder gathered waist maxi dress. So before we get started, kindly click the subscribe button. If you have done that, let's get into it. So I'll be using this beautiful fabric for this tutorial, and this is 8 yards. So this is an off-shoulder dress, so I am going to attach an elastic on the neckline. So I left 1.5 inches for my elastic casing. So I am going to start my measurements from this line. So I'll be taking out 4.5 inches for the off shoulder. So I'll place my tape this way, and I'll make sure the 4.5 inches is on this line, and I'll mark half of my armhole measurement, which is 8 inches. Now I am going to come in by, you can come in by 3 inches or 3.5 inches. It depends on the size you're working with. So I'll be using 3.5 inches, but I'm going to mark 4 inches because I'll be using 1/2 inch to join the side seam allowance. So I am also going to mark the 4 inches here and connect it this way, and I'll make a curve for the armhole. So for the circumference measurement, quarter of my bust circumference is 10.5 inches. So I'll be using 1/2 inch for the side seam allowance, that is 11 inches, and I'll be adding extra 1, 2, 3 inches on the off shoulder measurement because I'll be attaching an elastic band to give the exact off shoulder measurement. So I'll also be using 14 inches on the waist. So the shoulder to waist is 17 inches, but I added 1/2 inch for sewing allowance. So I folded another fabric for the back piece. Now I am going to cut out the front and the back piece together. So this is the front and the back piece. Now I am going to join the front and the back piece. So I place good sides together this way, and I am going to pin it down. And so by 1/2 inch for the side seam allowance. So I've gone ahead to cut out the sleeve, and I'll be cutting out both sleeves. And the total length of the sleeve is 25 inches. So I marked 1.5 inch on the off shoulder and the wrist for my elastic casing. So I am going to attach an elastic band on both sides. So for the width of the sleeve, it depends on how full you want it. So I'm using 13 inches here. So I'll be using 1/2 inch for the side seam allowance. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'll place this piece I cut out earlier. I'll place it this way and align it and cut it out. So I cut it out on the open edge of the sleeve. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'll sew the side seam allowance. That's the 1/2 inch for side seam allowance on both sleeve. So now I've joined the side seam allowance on the sleeve and also on the bodice. So the next thing I'm going to do is to attach the sleeve to the bodice. So I'm going to align the side seam this way and pin it down. So I'll do the same thing on the other sleeve. I'll align the side seam and pin it down. So after doing that, I'll sew by 1/2 inch and I'll hem the elastic casing. Also on the sleeve, I'll hem the elastic casing. So I've done that. As you can see, I've attached the sleeve and I have hemmed the elastic casing. So I left about 1 inch space that I'll pass my elastic, also on the sleeve. So I'm going to attach an elastic band on the off-shoulder neckline and also on the wrist and also on the waist. So for the lower part of the dress, I'll be using this 6 yards of fabric. So this is 2 yards, 2 yards, and 2 yards. So the length is by 60 inches. Now I'll be using this for the front and the back piece, and for this other one is also 2 yards. So I'll divide it into 2 for the front and the back piece. So I'm going to keep this aside, and remember I said this is 2 yards by 60 inches. So I'm going to divide it into 2 yards by 30 inches. And I'll attach it on the front and the back piece. That way it will be 2 yards by 90 inches for the front and the back piece. So I've done that. Now I have 2 pieces for the front and the back piece, and it is 2 yards by 30 inches length. So I'll join each for the front and the back piece. So you can use 2 yards for the front and back piece if you don't want it to really full. So I'm going to join it this way. I'll place good sides together and I'll sew by 1/2 inch. So what I'll have for the front piece is 2 yards by 90 inches length, and I'll do the same thing on the back piece. So I folded the 2 yards by 90 inches length on bias this way, as you can see. And I made sure I ironed the folded edge. So now I am going to use the waist circumference divided by 4, and then I'll add extra inches because of the ruffles that I want to make on the waist. So I used 14 inches for the waist, times 4 is 56 inches. And I used 1/2 inch on both sides for side seam allowance, that is 55 inches. So I'll divide the waist by 4, which is 55 divided by 4. That will give me 13.75. But I will mark 25 inches, as you can see. So I added extra 11.25 inches for the ruffles. So from the 25 inches, I am going to mark 43 inches round for the full length. So, and I'll be using 2 inch for hemming allowance, that is 45 inches. So the total length of the gown is 60 inches. So I've gone ahead to cut it out, and this is the front piece, and I'll also cut the back piece the same way. So I've done that, and I placed good sides together, as you can see. So I'll sew on 1/2 inch for side seam allowance. So I've done that. I've joined the side seam, as you can see. Now I am going to make a ruffle on the waist. So I am going to use the longest stitch on my sewing machine to sew on 1/2 inch all through, and I'll gather it, and I'll make sure it is up to the waist circumference. So I've done that. As as you can see, and now I am going to attach the upper and the lower part. So I will place good sides together this way, and I'll align the side seam, and I'll sew by 1/2 inch round. So I've done that, and now I am going to attach the elastic band. So what I did was I extended the elastic band on my waist to know the exact measurement. So I have 18 inches here. And so I marked the midpoint, as you can see. So it's going to be for the front and the back piece. So I'll make sure from the midpoint here to the edge here is for the front piece when I'm attaching the elastic. And I'll use the other half for the back piece. So I'll start sewing from the side seam this way, and I'll make sure I am sewing on the stitch. So this is how it came out. As you can see, it will give the waist its shape. Now I am also going to attach the elastic band for the off shoulder and the wrist. So using a safety pin, I am going to pass my elastic band. So after doing that, I'll join the elastic band by 1/2 inch. And then I'll sew the 1 inch I left earlier. And I'll do the same on the sleeve. So I have done that, and this is how beautiful it came out, as you can see. And I also made a belt for the dress. So we have come to the end of this tutorial. Kindly give this video a thumbs up, and also click on the subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to be updated when I upload a new video. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.